Jay, how are you?
Fantastic. Thanks for having me.
Look at that energy coming right out the gate with some good stuff. Okay, fantastic. Jay, first, let me just say I've really enjoyed your books, and Future Proofing You was a book that I felt like I had to consume end to end, almost start to finish. And so I just want to say congratulations on
Oh,
grabbing attention and sharing some really important information.
well, I saw a hole in the motivational self-improvement books. There were those with great egos that said, this is how I did it, and if, you got out of World War II when I did and you joined GE, you could be Jack Welch. Irrelevant. Journalists from the outside or academics that never sat in an empty room and built $1 billion company. But as you know, I've run multinational companies with hundreds of thousands of employees. I've sat in an empty room many times and started companies that have gone on to become great things. And I'm not smarter than the average bear. I am the average bear. So I wrote the first book, Disrupt You, to show people how to do this. I was teaching it at the largest engineering school in the US, at USC. And I noticed these brilliant students that had no clue how the world worked. And that book was a huge success. It's in a dozen languages. And I get what I call love letters. When I was a CEO, your inbox is, I hate you, I hate your company, you just get the garbage. When you write a book that helps empower people to change their lives, and it happens, I get what I call love letters. I've heard from people in 140 countries. And I don't mean that to brag. It's just motivates me. But I got this one email that said, this is all great, but I could never do it. And I have very thin skin. That ate at me. What was I missing? It was a millennial. And I had millennial sons. I know millennials. I don't stereotype them. And so I said, why not try something that nobody ever did? I'll put my reputation on the line. I'll take an immigrant who's homeless, grew up on welfare, mentor him one day a week for a year. Give him no cash, not open up the contacts, not tell him what to do, have to start a business that took zero capital. But could I share what I call the 12 truths? And spoiler, if you're reading Future Proofing You, he becomes a billionaire in 11 months. And there's nothing, you read the book, there's nothing in here that was rocket science. There's nothing that was, I hired Tiger Woods and said, I'm going to teach you to golf. He was a regular guy. And his example should be the inspiration to show anyone wherever they are in their quest. And it's not about money. Money is the dangling carrot. It's about, I believe, in purpose, to live a life of purpose. That's the purpose of life. And if you can take away the wants and needs and satisfy those, how much richer can your life be? And selfishly, how much richer will our world be? And that's why I wrote it.
Now, okay, you say he was a normal guy. And I don't want to miss the last statement you just made about purpose, because that's going to be a big part of our conversation. But you say he was a normal guy. He seemed to be extraordinary in at least one way: his work ethic, his passion, his maybe unhealthy need to prove that he could do it. And I put an asterisk next to that just because in context to most highly successful people, there sometimes is an unhealthy side to the motivation.
I can understand that part. He didn't have that work ethic. So one of the things that he got to find out when he read the book that I didn't tell him was, in our first meeting, I lied to him. I needed him to have a growth mindset, something I know you talk about all the time, from day one. I didn't have time for him to organically find himself and build his confidence. If I was going to put this artificial thing of 1 year to become a millionaire, I had to trick him into it. So when I met him, I lied to him. I didn't mean to in the mean way, but I knew there's a psychological principle called the Pygmalion Effect. Professor went to school, quizzed all the kids, told the teachers these three were super learners, super achievers, and what a shock at the end of the year, those three kids excel, except the professor lied. He just pulled three names out of a hat. But if you tell people they're special and you treat them special, they become special. It's as simple as that. So I told Vin Clancy that I had interviewed over 100 people, and he was the only one that had all the attributes to be a self-made millionaire. And no one had ever believed in him. His parents didn't believe in him. Society didn't believe in him. He grew up in a country where, there was a class strata and he wasn't part of it. So when he saw somebody older, somebody who was very successful and gray hair, even if he didn't believe it, said, if this old guy believed it, I'll go along with it. And he even wrote a letter to himself that I included in the book. And basically said, this guy's full of it, but I'll go along with it. What gave him the work ethic is by the end of the first month, he had made more money than he'd ever made in a year or his parents had ever made in a year. He could have flown across the ocean without a plane. I mean, he was on fire. What my big fear was in the selfish part of having a good story to tell is, would he burn out? Can you have somebody work 7 days a week, 7 nights a week, no dating, no watching the game, no TV? And yes, there are the obsessive people that have whatever in them to have that. That wasn't his nature. But what got him going and why it's called future-proofing you is once he started seeing the goal was achievable and once he hit it, he stuck with it because he knew it was going to take the next year off. Something a poor person never even dreams of, right? They live paycheck to paycheck, hand them out. And not that $1 million you can live the rest of your life, okay? It was that he knew he was future-proof. That after he traveled and lived life for a little bit, he knew he could sit down anywhere and do it again. And today he has multinational clients and a real business, and it's stuck with him. And he now has his 30s and 40s and the rest of his life to figure out work-life balance. And I think he has a healthier one than probably I did at his age.
This, and not to be lost, one of the caveats is that you are not going to seed, the business, and you are not going to make the introductions to make
Correct.
the business, right?
Correct.
So I think that those are important as well. And the thing that I kept scratching my head at, and one of the main reasons I wanted to talk to you is not about him, but the main reason I want to talk to you relative to him is you set up a paradigm where you found early on that he was highly motivated by external means. He got paid. And I'm not going to put a crosshair on that. I'm not going to, demonize that in any way. But we do know from research that external motivation is harder to sustain. So your intuition was bang on. And you probably knew that you probably knew the science of it as well. That being said, were you externally motivated? And is that how you recognized it? Because, throughout the book, I don't see you and understand you as being externally driven and externally motivated. So I wanted to understand that part of what you spotted.
Well,
if
I'm
you think it's healthy,
and then of my life.
Yeah, that's why I want to go back and understand this.
I'm much more evolved. And it was funny, when I wrote the first book, I had never been introspective. I didn't have the time. It was not, and my editor had said, you're really resilient. And I'd never thought of myself as resilient because I just didn't think of myself. You're too busy. So I grew up, working class. I had 2 sons when I was very young. And quite frankly, I wanted them to have a better life. That's all the motivation I needed. I wanted to be a good dad. I wanted to do with them and give them, and giving them, in my mindset, wasn't material things. Is being able to be present, being able to be there, not working round the clock so you miss those most important years. And so that was my motivation. And that carried me through. When they got out of the house and were grown, they didn't need me the way that they used to. I had to find a new purpose. And running big companies and making money, after a while, I've been there, done that. I don't have that burning desire to be a billionaire. I don't have that burning desire to have the biggest yacht. But none of those things make sense to me.
Did they at one point?
No, it was not. It was never about material things. It was freedom from dealing with assholes. That's what money gave you. Freedom to decide how you want to spend this gift called life. What do you want to accomplish? What do you want to do? And when I looked at what happened this past year in January in our nation's capital, people storming Congress, and this isn't politics, what I saw were thousands of people feeling left out, left behind, fighting over leftovers in our society. The American dream that they bought into doesn't exist. And they were taught by people that gave up on their dreams. They constantly apply for a job. By the mere definition, any job that exists means somebody else has had it, which means there's somebody more qualified. So you end up in this cycle where, the bottom half has a negative net worth. The pandemic then wiped out the middle class globally. Mom and pop restaurants, all these things don't have the capital. So the only way you're going to have a stable society is by having a stable middle class. Having 1% own 99%, that is instability. And that's where we're headed right now. Silicon Valley's been really great to me. Love what it's done. But their secret sauce is how can they buy into a monopoly? And the way you do it is somebody comes up with a great idea. You capitalize them so much that nobody else could raise the capital. So you have one Uber, you have one Facebook, you have one Google. This isn't working for the world. Yet, we're one click away from 7 billion people. There's a new self-made billionaire every 32 hours. What are they doing differently? And I've worked with, as you know, all these household names and knew them before they were billionaires. And I saw a pattern and I saw that it could be taught. And so if you could teach it to Vin, and Vin had some internal motivations. He had that chip on his shoulders of coming from a place where there were those that are better than you, your betters. And that's got to eat at you, right? And that quest for that, and a generation that grew up on social media where you see the greatest hits reel of everyone's life is this fake life that no one has to be an incredible pressure, especially in those that don't have. So I didn't have the expertise to go into the mental issues associated with this. I knew that he would grab onto this opportunity. And as long as I didn't work him to death, he'd be fine. And I really thought when his business, and there's a chapter in it when his business got knocked over sideways for nothing that we could have seen, nothing that he did wrong, and what a great plot twist that I couldn't have come up with. I was worried he was going to, hey, I made a few $100,000, I'm done. I really thought, and when he didn't give up, that told me he had the growth mindset, all the tricks, all the motivation. I could mentor him to be better in business, but the core skills that he needed to succeed were already his.
You said something in the book where you were mentioning that you're going to put your ass on the line. This is an experiment. And I paused and I was like, is that real? Like, did you publicly go forward and tell people about what you're doing?
Oh,
or was that a dramatic moment to suck me into the book even further?
No. I don't know if you know who Tom Bilyeu is. Motivational guy. He wrote the foreword. I went to Tom with this idea. He's a big fan of the first book, Disrupt You.
Yeah.
And I said, let's videotape these sessions each week. So you have another piece of content on your show and let's watch it. And so day one, after we had the pizza the night before, Ben and I went to Tom Bilyeu's house and studio, and we taped that session. And Tom walked away from it going, this guy isn't going to do it. This guy doesn't believe it. He's laughing at Jay. I'm not going to follow through on the show. But how great that show would have been.
And Tom says it in the foreword, like, damn
Yeah.
it. I wish I would have followed through.
Yeah.
So you did feel exposed, like you were taking some risk in this venture as well.
Yeah,
even though there's no capital, it was more reputation.
Well, at a certain stage of the game, capital is irrelevant.
Mm-hmm.
All that I have that I will die with is my reputation.
Okay, I want to take a quick little break here to talk about Hyperice. Hyperice is a wellness tech company. You're probably familiar with them if you're interested in recovery and getting after it in life. They make devices that are designed to help you move better. They're known for their award-winning Hypervolt. It's the world's most powerful percussion massage device, and it features Quiet Glide technology. And so they have a range of products from handheld massage devices to vibrating foam rollers to thermal technology. Their product line that I absolutely love as well is called Normatec Compression Systems. So essentially, Hyper Ice helps you warm up faster, recover quicker, and simply move better. I've used Hyper Ice, almost all of their technology, for years. And what I love most about them is all of their products are thoughtful, they're dynamic, they have a cutting edge approach to recovery. And so if you want to really make a difference, I want to encourage you to go check out their science, their products, and you can find all of that at hyperice.com. And then you'll also see that I'm on their advisory board. And so I love their product from a science perspective, from an applied standpoint. And so, yes, I'm sharing them with you, but I'm also like loving them, what they're doing for so many other reasons. So go check them out, see the position that they're taking in the world, check out their technology, give it a go. It's hyperice.com. And it's spelled just like it sounds, hyper, HYPERICE.com. And Finding Mastery is also brought to you by Inside Tracker. So Inside Tracker, what they do is they cut through the noise by analyzing your blood, your DNA, lifestyle patterns, and then they include fitness trackers as well to provide you with a personalized, science-backed, trackable action plan on how to live, how to age, how to perform better. And that is my favorite part of what they're doing, is that they don't just give you data and say, figure it out. They actually provide you with nutrition and lifestyle actionable steps that you can take into your life to live well. For a limited time, Inside Tracker is offering the Finding Mastery community, that's you, 25% off their entire store. So if you're interested, this is a great opportunity to get started. So just go to insidetracker.com/finding mastery. You spell that inside, INSIDE, tracker, TRACKER, insidetracker.com/finding mastery for 25% off. And with that, let's jump right back into our conversation. Take me back to like the dinner table when you're growing up. What was that like? Because the way I understand you is purpose driven. You cracked it at the highest level in business. You want to make a difference. You're taking some young kids or one under your tutelage, and then you're sharing best practices with many to create that sense of purpose and generativity based on your history, which is, great success. And what was the dinner table like? And maybe tell me the age that comes to mind as you're telling the story.
I think we stopped having family dinners by about sixth grade. Dad was a school teacher, would come home. Mom was at home, and dinner was on the table. And not a whole lot of motivation coming from there. My dad also worked nights and weekends. My dad always had more than one job. Didn't get to spend much time with him, but I would work at whatever he was doing. Later, when they started a mom and pop restaurant, by the time I'm 13, I'm working in the restaurant. Senior year of high school, I was able to get independent study. I went 1 hour a day, and the rest I worked at the restaurant. School, by then I figured out how to get the grades, but not learn anything. Like I cheated myself out of an education. But when I was exposed to and finally saw that not everybody was of the same strata, that, there was a different thing out there, then I became, by my college years, obsessed with how did successful people become successful? And so I was editor of my college paper. And so I got to pick the plum assignments when all these famous celebrities, Bob Hope and everybody would come to school. I knew they all were at the same point as I was at that stage. And then what happened? I want to know that secret elevator to the top. And from meeting and talking and asking over and over again, I realized there wasn't. These were what I call stubborn people. You would call them determined. They just kept on going because the only person that can stop you is you. And if you think you can or you think you can't, you're right. And eventually they got lucky, right? The harder they worked, the luckier they got. And so whether consciously or unconsciously, I emulated that. My success is because I have failed more than anybody you will ever meet. I just try more freaking crazy things and keep going. And the genius ideas don't always hit because you couldn't communicate them. It took me a long time to figure out that the person that was in the C-suite office, and I'd get that big meeting. I remember going to meet the CEO of Pepsi. I had a brilliant idea for them. And I was young. And I left that meeting on, why don't they get it? Why don't they get it? And it took me about 20 years of my career to go, it's not their job to get it. Their way of doing things got them to the corner office. My job is to convince people living in the past the future in a way that they can comprehend. And once I flipped the switch that was my responsibility, I became Mr. Deal Junkie. There was nobody I couldn't do a deal with. I mean, I did a deal with the Pope. I mean, whatever you want to make happen, there's a way to make it happen. And it became really fun to do some outlandish, crazy things.
So hold on, let's start there. The deal with the Pope. Like, I get the chutzpah that you're talking about, which is like a light bulb goes off and you say,
not the word the Pope would use.
Yeah. Yeah. Good string. That's good. So I get the light bulb that went off for you, and you say, okay, my job is to help convey and, to enroll or to enlist somebody in this idea that I have, but that's not their job. And how old were you when you did this deal with the Pope? And maybe you could just walk through the narrative around approaching the conversation.
Early 30s. So way back in time, at one point I had half a dozen of the top 10 best-selling video games. And back then, big problem was people understanding how to use their computers. This were real simple games, early days, not the stuff, of today. And so one of my tenets of my company was I required everybody to man some hours of tech support. The receptionist, the graphic artist, anybody. So we'd get a sense of who the customer was and what they understood. And back then you just have to shut off the computer and wait for it to reboot. And so you had to chat with these people. And one day I'm doing, if I make people do it, I have to do it too. I'm doing tech support calls and I'm killing time with the guy who has computers and what's his name's Father Timothy. And I go, oh, I'm a father too. I have 2 sons. He goes, no, I'm a Jesuit. And I go, what's that? Okay. No catechism in my background. And he explains that he's in IT at the Vatican. And I'm like, the church has an IT department? I don't sit there and think an organization of 1 billion members probably has, some infrastructure. I'm like, that's kind of cool. And I pitch him an idea that I've always had, that the Vatican's collection is really, putting religion aside for a second, is the history of Western art, the history of Western music, Western culture. Can we do, the history of this institution as a CD-ROM or whatever? And at that time, the church felt that they were losing kids to video games and computers. And make a long story short, if you ask, it can happen. I mean, I learned early on. I learned, and it's probably not the best example, but I'm transparent in my thinking. I went to UCLA, a college of 40,000 students. I went there because it was a college of 20,000 women. Okay. I'm like, there are all these beautiful women on this campus. I don't want to go to small school where there's going to be 3 people. And I learned early on that some of the most beautiful, we had Miss California, future Miss Americas, and, Heather Locklear was in my dorm. And no one was asking these women out because they were on a whole different league. So why not ask? If they say no, I'm back where I started. If they say yes, I've had the greatest weekend of my life, okay? And once you realize that there is no such thing as rejection, that there's no such thing as failing. Because in business, when you fail, you don't end up where you started. You either earn or you learn. So I've taken this approach to life. I had my little startup company. I had an idea that would change video games. Video games back then were beep, 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 beep. And now sound cards were going to be in computers so they could have real sound. Why not have rock and roll soundtracks to video games? It's an obvious idea. At that time, I knew no one in the music industry. I knew nobody in any industry, but I knew it would sell more PC games because the game systems could only do beep, 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 but a PC game could have music. So I reached out to Bill Gates, the richest man in the world. I didn't know him, but I knew it was a good idea for Microsoft. And I got lucky. And I didn't ask him to do something for me. I asked him to write an introduction letter for me to David Geffen, the most powerful man in the music industry, the first billionaire in the music industry. And when David got something from Bill Gates, he took the meeting with little old me. And that became my biggest game of all time with Aerosmith, Guns N' Roses, Peter Gabriel. And fast forward, Aerosmith's made more money from video games than they had from music publishing.
It's hard to believe that, but I understand the math. So let's go right underneath the surface. Fear of rejection seems like it is nascent for you, but that's buffered by your framing and your definition of fear, which is no. Fear is like, either it doesn't exist, which I have a hard time with.
Let me challenge that.
Okay, because I was going to have a hard time with that too.
Fear is real. I hate every charlatan out there that says you can overcome fear, you can get past fear. I have a whole chapter on it in Future Proofing You. Your oldest part of the brain, the lizard brain, is the fight or flight. You are hardwired for fear. If we were in a room meeting for the first time, your first thing before I say anything is you're sizing up, am I a threat to you? Okay? Can't get past it. But as I tell people, if you're thinking about you're afraid to start a business because you'll be embarrassed if it fails, you'll lose your money, you'll lose your self-esteem, you'll lose other people's money, all those fears. If you're dwelling on that, walking down the street, and a semi loaded with dynamite and sharks has no brakes, is coming at you, you're not thinking about those fears. You're thinking about the existential one of dying, and you jump out of the way or die, which means you can prioritize fear. So if you focus on that you're trading a day of your life at a job that gives you nothing, they pay you enough to show up and not enough to care, and then it turns into a week, a year, you're going to wake up one day and have given up the most precious thing in the universe for what? For nothing. And I tell people, go talk to their grandparents or go to a senior center and ask people their biggest regret in life. And it's not what they failed at, it's what they failed to try. So when you have those other fears, let the existential one hang over you and say, you just gave up one of your 80,000 days. How many more are you going to give up? Because every day you waste on whatever it is you're doing, you're not working towards a future that you can enjoy. And so that's how I handle fear. I'm not fearless.
So you use it cognitively. So you think about the existential fear of it not being a meaningful life to deal with the more immediate fears of looking bad.
Yeah. And I also have to say I'm lucky because I don't know why. I really don't care what other people think.
Where did you learn that? Like, how did that come? Because I don't find you to be a narcissist, which is, that is one of the components, maybe sometimes a positive glow of narcissism, especially in our modern society. But I don't find you to have narcissism as it doesn't leap in the way that we're speaking or even leap out in any of the writings that you've done. So like, how have you come to not care?
I guess because I've been this way since I was a little kid. Like go out of the house without looking in the mirror, go to that meeting with David Geffen, which I talk about in the thing, biggest meeting of my life, and I have two different shoes on and one's a lace up. I mean, I want to know why other people are so consumed with this. My wife and I have this conversation all the time. Like, she doesn't want to go somewhere because, pandemic, I gained weight. I don't want people to see me. I don't want this. I don't want, no one's spending their time thinking about us. No one's thinking about, everybody's so self-involved that it seems narcissistic to believe that others are judging and thinking. And it's very freeing.
Oh, it's incredibly freeing. People learn about the critic of others from their parents. And so when their parents are critics to them, and it can be very subtle because, some parents are really smart and they say, do you think that looks good on you? Or, hey, honey, I really appreciate hey, honey, maybe try the red shirt instead of the green shirt. Or it's even more cunning, which is like, oh my goodness, you look so good in red. And then
I don't think I got any attention from my parents one way or the other.
Yeah, which is interesting. So
I spent most of elementary school sick, so I was home more than I was in school.
That's right.
So I had my own world.
Did you use extreme performance to get attention from yourself or from your parents?
Define extreme performance.
I mean, you've kicked ass in life, dude. Like you've made a lot of money. You ran things at the highest level. And oftentimes there's a bit of neuroticism or some sort of anxiety that sits underneath of it. So that people will look at you and be like, oh, you do matter. Wow, you are special. When,
I decided not to go to law school, my parents wanted a doctor. I fainted at the sight of blood.
This is a good story. I know.
So then the only other choice is to be a lawyer. I looked at it, and I have a lot of friends that are lawyers. It really looked like you're doing homework for other people for the rest of your life. I mean, I just didn't see it. And I got a full scholarship to go to law school, a great law school. And that summer I said, I'm not. I have no desire. My parents didn't talk to me for quite some time. They were so disappointed. So yeah, part of me wanted to prove, that I could make it. And, a mentor of mine, Richard Branson's original partner, Ken Berry, he had a sibling who was a doctor, and one was an engineer. He dropped out of school with Richard and started Virgin. I think we know who ended up, the most successful. So I always went to the beat of a different drummer. I was on every report card when I look back to first grade. I just, the motivation was me, but at some point, I wanted to say I'm successful. And I think psychologically, when you achieve more than the generation before you, you feel a sense of accomplishment because you're comparing yourself to the environment from which you came. But I judge success by how do my children turn out? Did I do right by them? I mean, my motivation in life wasn't to be an entrepreneur, all right? I got out of school and there were no jobs. Like nobody prepared me for this. Like, hey, I got the good grades. Hello. No one cares. And once you figure it out on your own and figure out that you can set your own course, make your own money, you're not your own boss, you answer to everybody at that point. It's very, addicting because it becomes an easy game to play. And I always liked games. And so I always looked at these challenges as just puzzles to solve.
How do you go from surveying, and this is your core tenet about wanting to help entrepreneurs or wanting to help people become entrepreneurs more precisely. How did you go from surveying the landscape and saying, I don't see a job, I don't see a future where I'm working for other people, let me go start on my own? And there's a gap in there. And some of the gaps that you might close is that I didn't have debt. I didn't have a car note. I didn't have.
Oh, I had debt.
You did have debt. Okay. Yeah. So then how do you take that? How do you survey?
I had the repo man come over to, I was in my house, ran my company out of my house, and I was hosting a Cub Scout little meeting where you make these little cars, I don't know what they call them, these little wooden racer cars that all the kids make. And if you do a movie of my life, they're coming to take my real car where the kids are making little wooden ones, kind of just stands in your head. And the guy came to the door and I'm like, dude, you can see I'm not running away. I mean, I need my car. I live in LA. I'll figure it out, a way to make the payment. And, the guy cut me some slack.
Wait, hold on. You put together the repo man?
No.
Okay. So no, you did not? It sounds like you did.
I got him to give me some time.
Okay. So you put it together with the repo man. I mean, these are, okay. So let's drill into that. How do you, Jay, how do you do that? A guy's coming to take your car and you're like, did you give him the puppy dog eyes? I doubt it. But how does that work? Because you didn't get pissed. You didn't be like, get out of here.
That's the whole thing. I work all over the globe. I spent 20 years literally at an airport. Okay. It's just a blur. Name the country I've been there, name the thing. And your flights get canceled. And I've seen 1,000 people go up to this poor young man or woman that's working for just above minimum wage and rail into them with their self-importance of you better da 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 da. I've seen this endlessly.
Yeah.
And I wait for those people to finish. And I go, I see you're having a bad day too. Okay. This isn't your fault. It's not my fault. I know you don't have a magic wand. But is there any idea or tip you can tell me or something so that, here's what I'm trying to do and treat people that way. I've yet to find somebody I can't help, and I've yet to find somebody who can't help me. I have yet to find somebody I can't learn from. So when you treat people that way, they're so shocked. I mean, I had a problem with here's a rich guy problem, a tax situation with property or whatever. And the guy in front of me in the case in court was like cursing at the judge. Like, he could tell you how that went over. By the time he got done getting the guy all riled up, I just go, hey, I want to be here as much as you do. I don't think this makes sense. Okay, just look at it and, let's go home early. You just tell me what you decide. And he just, in my favor, didn't even look at anything. I mean, you just treat people the way you want to be treated. How complicated is that?
Well, when people are fatigued and they're highly anxious and they're highly irritable because their world feels very hostile, it is hard to live in alignment with the first principles, which what you just described as the first principles. So
not if it's your core being.
Well, that's what I want to understand about you, because I'm feeling you in this conversation that you are fully aligned with your first principles, and you're saying, listen, this is what matters to me. I do want to double click and say, what are those first principles?
So I have a stereotype, and you've worked with some of the top athletes in the world, that athletes are testosterone, go, fight, conquer, win. And when my book editor said, you're very competitive, I'm like, I never played a single sport. I'm not competitive. Like, I had a very narrow definition of competitive, but I knew that anybody could beat me at anything physical on the planet. Okay. I still hold the California state record in 8th grade when they explained wrestling in school, state sanctioned beating up of Jay. I still have the record. I could get both of my shoulders on the mat before the other kid touched me. Okay. Like, I have, because I came from that background, of being, I grew up in a tough neighborhood where you could either fight, run fast, or better be funny. So you develop how to get along. It's the only tool I had left in the quiver.
Okay, I want to take a quick little break here to talk about Masterworks. Did you know that art is among the hottest markets on earth? Like, investing in art is a big deal. And according to the Wall Street Journal, this is like a really hot market. While many have reaped profits lately from all kinds of assets like stocks and equity in homes and private equity, the art holdings could prove to be one of the biggest paydays that folks are finding. And so now you too can invest in works by artists like Picasso and Warhol and Banksy with Masterworks. They are the only platform that lets you buy shares of paintings similarly to stocks. So all of their investment offerings are registered with the SEC, and 250,000 investors are now using their platform. How about this? Those early adopters to their investment platform have already seen the results. A 32% annualized return from a Banksy sale in 2020. Pretty cool. Masterworks has created a platform I think you're going to want to check out. And in order to skip the waitlist and get access immediately, you just need to head to our Finding Mastery link, and that is masterworks.io/findingmastery. And that'll allow you to skip the waitlist. So that's masterworks.io/findingmastery. And also make sure that you check out important disclosures at masterworks.io/disclaimer. And Finding Mastery is also brought to you by Athletic Greens. So by now, I hope that you've had a chance to give Athletic Greens a go. They are a daily green supplement. They have been my absolute go-to for the last 6+ years for staying healthy and getting in those vital nutrients that I might not be finding in my daily nutrition. So I just want to pause here. High quality nutrition, it is one of the foundational components for living life with the necessary energy to be able to meet the challenges that come for us that are interested in the path of mastery. So Athletic Greens is part of my morning routine as an all-in-one holistic solution. One of the things that I love about them is that they got the taste right. I've tried hundreds of, vegetable-based products here. And they got it right. They've dialed it in. They have tinkered and tinkered and tinkered, never compromising integrity and quality of ingredients. And it's completely lifestyle friendly. Whether you eat keto or paleo or vegan, dairy-free or gluten-free, it all contains less than 1 gram of sugar without compromising, like I said, on any of the taste. And right now, Athletic Greens is doubling down on supporting your immune system. So they're offering us a free 1-year supply of vitamin D and 5 free individual packs with your first purchase when you visit athleticgreens.com/finding mastery. Again, it's athleticgreens.com/finding mastery to get your free year supply of vitamin D and then 5 free individual packs. And now let's jump right back into the conversation. That's cool. Okay. First principles. Let's double click under there because I think the special sauce for you is that your first principles and then they're portable. You take them everywhere you go, as opposed to, there are these fancy words that you put on the walls or the hallways in your businesses, or you write them down in the journal, once a year and look back and be like, oh yeah. But I think
company mission statements, what a waste of time.
Yeah. Okay, good. Because if you're not breathing it every day, it is just an academic exercise. So
I guess, you're trying to get into the psyche of me. So I'll give you the few clues that I picked up about myself.
It's okay, Jay. It's you and me. We can go there.
Because I had and still have an authoritarian father who, his explanation for anything was because I say so that you should respect authority because you're told to. I flipped that script at, 4 years old. Okay. I have zero respect for authority, teacher, principal, boss, anything, unless you earn it. Okay. No one is better. Right. And no one's beneath. Right. So, I'll treat everybody until they teach me how I can or cannot trust them, work with them, whatever. And as I said, the only thing that money changed is it allowed me not to have to deal with the kind of people that you shouldn't have to deal with, that too many people have their lives, battered by.
It's cool. So that's freedom for you, is to be able to choose with whom and to be able to choose what.
People that look down on people that are in abusive spouse relationships or battered family or whatever, and realize that these people truly believe that they have no other choice, that there is no way out. If you can help people take the blinders off, whatever their goal is. And again, I kind of trick people in both of my books. You think it's about self-help, self-improvement, and how to make a bunch of money, but they both end on, social capitalism, right? What can you do to make the world better while you're here? You don't get to live forever, but your ideas and your impact can. And so, we're using a planet and a half's worth of stuff. Now, yes, there's guys that I know that think it would be fun to just leave this planet and start over somewhere. And I'm not going to knock them because they sure think differently. But there's so much that we can do here. It's like little kids, pet peeve. Any adult that asks a little kid, what do you want to be when you grow up? That instantly assumes a world where you get to be one thing and you're that one narrow sliver and that's your life. When I always ask kids, what problem do you want to solve when you grow up? Because at every stage of life, you'll have injustice in your life. You'll see things that need fixing. I tell the story of one of my closest friends was lucky enough to have her teeth knocked out by a swing when she was 10. And I say lucky enough because when the dentist gave her smile back, she knew at 10 years old she wanted to be a dental surgeon and do that for people. And she's a dental surgeon, and she's thrilled with life, and she got to be her dream. I didn't have any epiphany.
So are you trying to solve the expansion of the middle class, or is that too simplistic?
Solve is too egotistical of a statement. Okay. I am trying to chip away. There's never been a war between two countries that have a McDonald's. Let that sink in for a second. There's a whole lot to unpack in that. But basically, A middle class is stability. A middle class is what made the city state and the nation state, and we're not focused on it. We're not teaching it. I don't understand. Most of what we've taught was to give you enough knowledge to work in somebody's factory, and people don't work in factories. Half of all jobs will be automated over the next 5 years. There's going to be massive climate migration of people because their nation states can't feed their people. So you think we have, immigration issues in our country or Europe or anywhere. What do you have when you have 1 billion people that if they stay where they are, they will starve? So unless we start getting more people solving things from a selfish standpoint, the quality of my life goes down. I mean, I love that we live in a time where people spend $200 million to make a movie and entertain my ass for 2 hours. That's amazing to me. Okay.
Yeah.
So what other things, can we do that just make it better, easier? I mean, you just have to fill a void. You just have to solve a problem. Solve for 5 people, you have friends. Solve for 1 million, you make money. Solve for 1 billion, you change history. I've watched these, some are really bright, but these people with fairly obvious ideas that didn't give up that have changed this world during my lifetime in ways that were science fiction.
So what do you say to the person who says, I hear you, Jay, like I'm stuck in this extraction model at work where I'm not really seen, I'm not really valued, I've got so much more potential that lies dormant, and I'm making money for them, the bosses and Wall Street, and I'm tired of it. What do you say to those folks that say, but I don't have clarity of an idea, and I don't think I have the tolerance to go out on my own, and I'm not even sure that I know what makes a great entrepreneur? I just gave you 3 ways that you can play. And so where would you take that person?
So the first thing,
that's a big number now of folks that are saying that right now.
We have more people that quit their jobs last month than any time in history.
Mm-hmm.
And we have a gazillion companies that can't get workers. Okay. Because they're not appreciated. They're not valued. They don't see a future in it. Okay. They don't share the values. I mean, I've learned so much by mentoring to understand what a millennial wants out of a job, because they're not money, Wolf of Wall Street motivated. Okay. So what I would say to that person is this. So what are you doing to change the situation? Okay. You say you don't know that you have the skills. What are you doing to get those skills? You don't have an idea. I have a 3 problems a day for 30-day technique that I write about in my books, that by the end of a month, you will have a $1 billion idea. Okay. You probably have several of them. Pick the ones. And you don't have to know every step on the road if you know where your destination is. Okay. The idea that everybody that made it had it all figured out and it was just like this straight course and I can tell you endless stories. And Bill Gates and Paul Allen's first company went belly up, and Henry Ford's and Walt Disney. And they learned from that. As an investor, I would rather invest in a CEO whose startup had already failed and be in his next one, because there's lessons that they learned. Somebody that just hit money, and I have one friend that just seems to just step in it with no brains. I don't think he's learned anything in his life. And maybe that's fate's way of just keeping him from interfering with everybody else. He truly accidentally bought the wrong company once, and it turned out that what he bought ended up being worth something. Just dumb stuff like that. So I try to tell that person that they can do it. I teach people the biggest mistake between my 2 big books was in future-proofing you. I acknowledge you cannot do it alone. You have to have mentors, a series of mentors. I teach people how to use LinkedIn to find those mentors. It's not, emailing some billionaire cold and say, will you be my mentor? Their knowledge is useless for you at your stage of life. You know,
You know what? I really appreciated those. I love the problems. I think it's worth mentioning the problem exercise. And I really appreciated the way that you thought about LinkedIn because um, like you, I get plenty of messages from LinkedIn. I don't message many of them back when they feel like I don't know, it's almost, it's flattering, but it's almost disrespectful to
it's forced.
my,
It's like walking into a bar and going,
yeah.
"Hey, will you have my baby?" That
Yeah,
doesn't work.
right. Yeah.
Okay.
It doesn't include my mission in life. It is just about their mission in life.
But let
Right.
me put the question a different way to you.
Mhm.
How many people have you met through your career where you posted something or they wrote something about an episode or you started a dialogue and over course of time,
That's
like
it.
friendships
Totally.
felt.
Yeah. It's so eloquent. It's natural. It's, go back to the bar analogies. You're striking a conversation up about maybe what's on TV or something. And before you know it, like you're talking
It,
business.
it's so easy to connect.
Yeah. You
Um,
are a connector. I think it's one of your superpowers, right? To be able to see people and, oh, you're
now,
pausing.
I have friends that are really good connectors. It is a gift that if I could have that gift of charisma, like if you spend any time with Bill
You're
Clinton,
saying you don't have charisma, Jay?
no, I've met the people that are charismatic. Yeah, I'm a
So,
nerd.
okay. You're what?
A nerd.
All right. So then what I don't like this question so much, but I don't know how to frame it otherwise, like superpowers or like, what is the thing that is really special about you? Because I would say you've got great personality, charisma. Like I definitely am
My
seeing it here.
if I said it, what I think I am uniquely best at in the world,
I
I
love it.
connect dots like nobody else. I can't teach people how to do that. I think it's because I'm dyslexic. I just see connections between almost anything. I mean, I tell the story in Disrupt You that I had to launch the competitor to iTunes. They were spending $100 million on advertising. I have none. My way of tackling it was to look in the news, what companies are in trouble, because anybody in trouble is open to a new idea. And McDonald's had their worst year ever after Super Size Me came out. Sales were down 9%, which means you're not making any profits. So I go, okay, now all that I have to do, what's an idea that I can have that helps my digital music store and helps McDonald's? And so I pitched the CEO, buy a Big Mac, get a track. I'll make you hip and cool and da-da-da. They shot the best commercial in the world. I can't take credit for any of it. It was totally cool. Pulled some favors to get Justin Timberlake to do a cameo in the commercial. They put up signs at every McDonald's. They put every tray layer, every bag. They spent $20 million or $60 million advertising the launch of my store and drove me 20 million paying customers the first week. My cost, $0.00. And because of another thing, which is too long of a story, actually made profit from McDonald's on the deal on top of it. So it's just the dots seem, some people look at a Rorschach and see an ink blot, and I'll tell you the whole story of how that came to that moment. It's just that's my only gift, and thank God, because I've worked with people that have tremendous skills in one thing. I mean, Wozniak knew more about computers than anybody on the planet, and had he not met Steve Jobs, would have basically been poor. No disrespect. Guy's still a genius. Okay? And the other thing that I got to see, which maybe I'd write a book about sometime, is seeing so many people before fame and money, whether it was running movie studios or music companies or in the tech thing, and after. I've yet to see money change anyone. Never does. Just amplifies them.
It's an accelerator. I was going to say, like, it accelerates some core characteristics. It
Wozniak now shared this, so I'm not outing him on this.
Mm-hmm.
But when he made his millions and millions of dollars and he left and didn't want to do that, he donated a bunch of money to a school district, got his teaching credential, and his life's goal was to teach the 5th grade. And none of those students or parents or anybody knew that a billionaire founder of Apple was their teacher. That's what he wanted to do. that's what gave him satisfaction.
Okay, with great clarity, what are some key characteristics that you think are important for entrepreneurship? And then I still want to go back to first principles. I don't think I've got my arms around first principles for you. But what are some of the key characteristics? Because I'm hoping you can speak to folks that are thinking about or are like, listen, I'm going the entrepreneur route. And if I can learn from Jay about some of those key characteristics, I'm going to write them down right now and I'm going to start practicing them.
So when you do the 3 ideas a day for 30 days and you have it, you'll come out with what are known as big ideas, audacious ideas, that idea that is so obvious and so good that it attracts like moths to a light. Because the key characteristic of an entrepreneur is you're a Pied Piper. You have to get investors to follow your dream and believe you, to give you capital. You have to have people that'll give up on their career to come and join your company and do the same. You have to have customers willing to try it, and they're not doing it for anything other than they believe in the dream too. And so it doesn't take ego. I've yet to have an idea in my life. I have a half an idea. And I try to then surround myself with people that can make it better. And then when it becomes this great thing, then I get to take complete credit for it. No, but it's really, you have to be able to be flexible. An entrepreneur is going to find real early on that you're going to have to do a little bit of everything. And you're going to suck at most of these things. So it's good you'll figure out how to hire people that are different. But you're also going to have to give up the things that you enjoy doing, because those will be the easiest for you to manage because you understand them. And what else does an entrepreneur need? You need to know how to live sparsely, because you don't know how long it's going to take. Elon Musk, famously an immigrant, wanted to see if he could live on $1 a day. And his first company, he and his brother slept in the office. The website was down at night. They coded. They only had one computer. They showered at the Y down the hall. But he lived 30 days on, top ramen and oranges in bulk. And that gave him the confidence. He says, no matter what I do in life, I know I can make $30 in a month, right? I won't be homeless. And when he sold, PayPal and became fabulously wealthy, when mortal men would then build a castle or do whatever, he started 3 companies with every penny that he made. And when I say every penny, had to borrow money from a friend to pay rent in an apartment. Now he's got $200 billion, a number that is incomprehensible, and spends most of the night sleeping in the parking lot in a little trailer. He's motivated by something far greater.
You are talking about like great purpose in life. And there's a lot of science around purpose. It sounds like you intuitively understand it. You've lived by it. Are you able to get with great clarity your purpose, like in a sentence or two?
Well, for first 40 years, it was just about being a dad.
Right.
Everything was an instrument along that. And when my kids went to college, I felt lost. I really did. Because as cliche as it sounds, heading another company, been there, done that. If you're not money motivated, the aggravation, CEOs deserve every penny they get. Okay. It is, especially I've been a public CEO. It is a miserable existence. And since I'll never be it again, I'll tell you that every one of them says, I'm thinking about the shareholders, the employees, God, country, family, all BS. You're on a 16-week hamster wheel because your compensation is tied to move the stock to this number, and the Brinks truck gets backed up to your house so that your great-grandchildren don't have to work for a living. And that's an incredible amount of pressure because it's an artificial game that the only way to win is at someone else's expense. All right. 16 weeks, you cannot do things in whole cloth. So I didn't have it. And through the process of teaching, through the process of writing, and seeing that I could add value, I got my purpose from people's emails. I got my purpose from seeing, on my lowest day, an email comes in, I go, I'll read to my wife. A dentist in Pakistan is thanking me. Like, what do I know about either of those two things, right? And the countries that I've heard from in their lives, that these are universal principles. My book comes out this week in French. It came out last week in Poland. It comes out in Italy in 2 weeks. And I get to meet these people and see, it sounds cliche, but there's more that unites us than divides us. Too many people have made too much money dividing people. But there's nothing that a few stubborn people can't accomplish. That's the definition of history. So how do I get people to accomplish things that are solving problems instead of creating them?
If we fast forward,
sure,
let's go 10 years. Let's go a decade. I know it's a big leap right now. If people knew what you knew and were able to exercise their mind and their heart in the way that you are, how would our leaders be leading differently to get to a more compatible, a more loving, a more productive world?
Oh, so you want to get into politics because it comes down to politics because politics, any country, anywhere is, and by way of background, I paid my way through college. And my whole life, my passion's been magic. I'm a performing member of the Magic Castle. Politics is about misdirection. Get people to vote against their own self-interest by giving them something to focus on. So the poorest among us are against having free healthcare. Okay, it's astounding. I won't get into getting people against self-interest by religion because then I'll get nothing but hate mail. But we argue over and fill our headlines around the world with, should we fund this little itty bitty thing when 60 cents of every dollar goes towards weapons of destruction? Our country's been at war for most of our 200 plus years of existence. I think our priorities are out of alignment. And if we're spending all that, it makes the other guy spend that. And, there's a lot of money in war. So that'd be the biggest thing. What we dumped in these two wars in the Mideast, we could have paved every road, free college, free healthcare, and had a great educational system. And you go, yeah, well, why don't we? Well, that's, when it costs you $2 billion to get elected into a $300,000 a year job, that kind of tells you who's making the rules. So I was a poli-sci major. I once had political aspirations when I was young. I once had a short story, supposed to have a meeting at the White House and they pushed to later in the day. So I went over to the Washington Post, pitched them a story for my company and whatever. And I'm going later, and the vice president asked me, sorry about, pushing your meeting back. And I'm like, you're like running the world. No biggie. He goes, how'd you fill the time? I said, I went over to the Washington Post and I got him to write something. And here, the second most powerful person on the planet goes, you can do that? And that's when you realize that there is no power in politics. The power's in the 6,000 people that own everything that, if they continue to think that owning more of it will make their lives better, it doesn't end well. It ends with, pitchforks.
So I've got two questions that you're teeing up. One is, what makes what is a modern leader? What is a modern leader right now? Because you're describing low potency. You're describing,
there's a whole lot of people that get into politics to right one wrong, to fix one problem, right? And they're mission oriented. And then when they get in there, power corrupts absolutely. The system is stronger than the individual. I've worked on 4 presidential campaigns of both parties, have been clients. And so I don't believe the cynicism that they went into it for the way that you come out of it. You just have to trade a piece of you every single time you want to get something done, and the likelihood that there's a piece of you left. I mean, look at the values that Jimmy Carter ascribed to. Ineffectual as a president, but what a great human being. And look at the legacy of him staying true to his belief system, of an icon for us to live up to. You know, so I don't, there is no simple solution. I've come up with some ways to solve various things and tried to get them through, around the world. And some countries it's worked. Mexico now has Entrepreneur Week. It's the coolest thing. It's like Shark Week on Discovery. The president of Mexico and I did a streaming thing. That was the most streamed thing in the country. They give awards to kids. There is no legacy of a Silicon Valley, of an investor class, whatever. The richest people made their money from, taking oil out of the ground or assembling things that are now done by robots in Southeast Asia, or expats repatriating capital. Well, oil's going away. Expats going away, and manufacturing. So unless they figure out how to create entrepreneurs, we will have a destabilized nation state on our southern border. Why is this not a priority? Why is fixing things never a priority until it's past the point of no return?
Well, we got our hands full with a destabilized United States, it seems, in many ways.
Well, but the whole world's facing these same issues. That's why you're seeing authoritarian types. When people feel the world moving under them, when they don't feel stability, the natural instinct is to find that macho leader that makes you feel secure. You and I probably have a similar intellect that don't understand that, but it's true. And vilifying the masses that are in a terrible situation isn't helping things either. So nobody seems to be focused on coming together and solving things, because power comes from division.
When you put your lenses for business leader, what makes a great business leader in the modern world?
A great business leader today has to understand that what got them to where they are will not keep them there or move them forward. When you're a CEO, you're like a piece of French cheese. There's an expiration date stamped on you, and you got a limited window before you start stinking up the joint. And the seeds to your salvation are somewhere in your company. Most likely levels and levels below the politics and the managers and people that aren't being listened to. So how do you start internal hackathons? How do you encourage disruptive thinking and new ideas and all of that? I was brought in at the very top of the music industry when Napster came along. They went from a $40 billion industry to $20 billion. It's over. Nobody's buying stuff. That's the only reason. Nobody in my entire career has called Jay, hired Jay for any consulting because they're having their best year and they want to do better. I'm like, we've tried everything else. Let's call the weirdo. And one of the things that I did the second I got there, and this is a large public corporation, is I went to the CFO and I said, I need to set up a phantom set of books, a creative set of accounting that will work like this. I need to be able to trade favors from my division that has no revenue, so that if I'm taking time or assets from another division, they still get their bonus, their kid still gets his braces. I'm not a threat to the status quo. So if you think of the old Kodak example, Kodak invented the digital camera, but it would never have the profit margin of film. So they squashed it, thinking if we don't make it, no one will. Where's Kodak? So the second I had this game going, I knew which divisions were hurting. I could say, listen, let me work with these artists. Let me take this. Let me do this thing. You don't have to understand it. Just know that you're going to hit your number. And we made $200 million the first year out of things that had nothing to do with music. Okay. It wasn't selling a record. It wasn't doing anything. And so I've done this again and again, and I failed at it at companies that just couldn't get out of this is how we've always done it. This is the annual plan. Those people are our competition, right? They don't see the new entrant, the other buggy whip manufacturers are the competition, not Henry Ford.
Do you compare yourself to others in a competitive landscape, or are you comparing yourself to yourself, like your own business growth arc,
yeah,
or what they're doing?
So I really hate competition because I know there's always somebody better looking, smarter, better connected, better anything, which is why I advise people to try to do something new, something different. There's tons of voids to fill. And if you're the only one doing it, by definition, you're the best in the world. So yeah, I compete against myself. I'm going for what can I pull off that I have. Now there's a couple times where you store something in the back of your mind that somebody that tried to do something and they couldn't pull it off, and you go, that'd be cool if I could. Richard Branson had this brilliant idea to combining his two passions of doing the first concert in the sky on a Virgin flight from Europe to the US. And FAA, turns out, has rules against playing instruments on a plane. Long story. But later, I pulled that one off and had Sheryl Crow do a concert from Chicago to LA to announce my digital music store. And that concert played videos of it on every United flight for a month. It was great PR and everything. But there was some satisfaction that, I figured out how to thread the needle in a way that nobody else could.
Good, man. Okay. Jay, I've loved this conversation. And, I was about to say thank you in advance, but there's one more question I want to ask you.
Okay.
If you could sit with any master, dead or alive, who would it be? Where would it be? And if you only had one question as a reductionist format here, what would that question be?
Wow. That's like you're going to have 5 minutes with God. You want to take more than 30 seconds to come with an answer. Because of my personal passion or whatever, I would love to have had the opportunity to sit down with Harry Houdini, who invented modern media, modern celebrity, international fame, all the things that we associate with entertainment today. And I'm curious, was this a plan or did it just happen? The Beatles didn't just miraculously become a global phenomenon. It was done. Brian knew what he was doing. But if you go, 100 years ago, how did this all start? And it all started with magic because, singers only speak certain languages and, does stuff, but the horse is here, the horse is not there. The kind of plays everywhere. But that would be the person I'm most curious about because I've spent so much time studying it afar, probably irrelevant to anybody but other magic nerds. But that's the honest answer.
I love it. Jay, thank you. And what a gift. What a pleasure to feel your passion, your clarity, and to get a sense of your purpose. And then, I hope that our audience is listening going, yeah.
So to anybody that's made it this far into it and is really thinking about it, on my website, jaysamit.com, I have free workbooks for each of these books. So, you're reading stuff, you get an idea, you get to the next chapter, that idea is gone. You can write down, you can start working on your plan for life today. No catch, no upsell. I don't sell anything. And all that I ask is, send me an email and share me, your story, how your journey went, because that's the motivation that keeps me going.
Jay, again, you're a legend. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you so much for the time.